Welcome to another episode of Buckle Up, an ultra running podcast with Simon and Brian. Simon, how are you doing? Simon, I feel like I just saw you. Like, I literally just saw you. I feel like that. Why?
Well, Johnny, I did see you, Johnny, at Javelina 100 mile, which was my last race of the year, last 100 miler of the year. It's a great way to kind of close the year for me. It's not the highest stress race. It's quite the opposite, party race with costume and everything. I went there as Waldo. You went there as Johnny.
Johnny on the spot.
Johnny on the spot, the news reporter, which was really funny. It was great to see you, spending time with friends and then running and closing the year. But I am curious about how your knees are doing, especially after Moab a few weeks back.
Yeah, I've been rested and recovering. I'm a little antsy because I'm not training, but unstructured time was the plan either way after Moab, whether I finished or not. So I'm right where I need to be. I did get out for one lap of, I got out for 2 laps of Javelina 100. So I ran one as a pacer. I paced a friend of mine for her 3rd lap for the 100K. But I also rode the bike for the first lap with the pros and a GoPro on my head.
Yeah,
an insider.
Aravipa wanted you to use an e-bike, so I don't know if that counts. You did not use the e-bike, I know, but still.
Yeah, the e-bike fell through at the last second, so I was stuck riding my actual mechanical bicycle that I had to pedal myself. But it actually worked out fine. It was great.
Yeah, I can totally imagine Jam seeing you come over and say, "All right, Grandpa, we'll get you an e-bike." Your knees don't look strong enough to support the bike. We'll get you an e-bike.
To be honest, I was a little worried about it. I wasn't sure how it's a golden ticket race. 2 tickets per men's group, 2 tickets per women's group are offered spots into the Western States 100. They can deny or accept those golden tickets. And so I thought it was going to be super competitive, which it was, don't get me wrong. But I thought that first lap, if anybody had any inkling that they wanted to be out with the front runners, they were going to be there. And so I was worried about, a good pack of 10 guys duking it out for that first lap and holding on for everything they had. And if it all falls apart, it all falls apart. But you never know. You got to go for it sometimes like that. So it didn't play out that way, luckily for myself, because I was worried about being the cyclist and in the way on a fairly narrow trail. It's not a full 2-track, but it's wider than a single track. And it's somewhere between those two.
You don't want to fall in the cactus like Tara did on one of our previous episodes for sure. But I mean, these guys were running real freaking fast. David Rush, I was on the course. Of course, that it was probably my worst Javelina. I was in pain. I was not doing well. So I was slower than usual. But still, the guy was able to lap me at the end of my first lap. So he did 2 laps while I did 1. And sure, I have a 30-minute gap, so like minus 30 minutes. But still, it's crazy. He was twice my speed. And he kept at that speed. My first lap was my fastest, whereas for him, he was probably flat. So amazing performance. These guys and these gals were really, really, really fast out there, making me feel old and useless.
Obviously, it's probably been talked about to death, but David Roach won. I think he missed the course record by 3 minutes or so. It was also the hottest Javelina on record with attempts. I don't think it was 100, but I thought it was like 98 or something along those lines. It didn't feel like that in the shade next to the camper, but I'm sure it felt like that out on the course where you were.
It wasn't so bad, we had AC in the RV.
I mean, when I looked out the window, it didn't look that hot. When I looked out the window, it didn't even look that hot.
Yeah, it was hot, but Javelina is always hot, and I think Aravipa does such a good job at providing ice, and you have an aid station at about every 4, 5, or 6 miles, so you're not out there in the heat for so long without ice, which makes a huge difference. And if I'm thinking back, you just did Moab, for example, it's hot, and then you have a 25-mile segment all by yourself. You need to carry the water, you're exposed all that time, you cannot really rest. It's a whole different situation. A 98 with ice is not as bad as like a 90 without ice.
Yeah, 25-mile sections at Moab. The ice does not last. You should write that down if you're thinking about going out to Moab. It does not last for 25 miles. The ice bandanas don't work like they do at Javelina. Thinking of Moab and the 200 miles, that's a great segue into our guest today. Chase Hammond just completed the Triple Crown of 200s through Destination Trail. He did Tahoe 200, Bigfoot 200, and finished it off with the Moab 240. It's I don't know. Is it a series? I don't know if it's a series, quite honestly. But there are a handful of people, probably more than a handful. There's probably 20, 30 people that sign up and register for the Triple Crown, the 3 races in the same series through the same race organization. Candace Burt, a former guest of ours, created Destination Trails quite a while ago, and she talks at length in the episode. So go back and take a listen to that one. But the Triple Crown is a big to do in the 200-mile world. I mean, it's 640 miles of racing in 5 months. It's quite the season. It's quite the summer. And Chase digs deep into some of the tactics that he's used this year, some of the training strategies that he had to employ to stay injury free. And all those things while keeping a crazy, crazy, busy, hectic life. He is the race director for Ultraverse supplements, where they provide nutritional supplements for endurance athletes, our people, Simon, our space. He also has 7 full boat races that he puts on. He's the race director, he and his wife, small time events, smaller events, not small by any means, on their need for attention to detail and to put on these events. Super encompassing. I've known Chase for a couple of years now. I helped him out this year by flagging or marking the first 75 miles of the Summit 200. Apparently, in this episode, I come to figure out that we ran Moab 240 together in 2020, but I didn't know him back then. So, but Chase is driven, man. He's got a lot on his plate and still sucked it up and got the Triple Crown of 200s done.
Yeah, I mean, the Triple Crown, like you say, is the gold standard almost of 200. It's slowly, I think, almost replacing the Grand Slam of 100 as kind of the wow, that's what you aspire to do someday. If I ever have the time and the money, I will do that. That's kind of the thinking a little bit. So he was able to do it despite having a busy calendar. I think what's impressive is obviously every single one of these races by themselves are challenging. Any single one of these races could be your A race for the year, but bundling them in the same year actually amplify the complexity, because now you have to think about recovery. Now when you're racing a single event, you need to think, should I be pushing right now? Should I be saving myself for next race? How do I balance that? And if we were professional athletes and we didn't have anything else to do, it would be pretty simple. Between both race, we rest, then we train, then we go race. But as he mentioned, he also has so many things going on that balancing everything was really the challenge. So every single race is difficult, but also being able to line up to next race in good shape is very difficult. So it was a really interesting discussion to dive into, more broadly his background as to what he's doing with his company and his races, but also specifically about the Triple Crown, going race by race discussion.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I don't even know how to get into the supplement world, but he's like trained to do it. Yeah, he's got a master's in nutrition. Yeah, and he's really well versed in creating a supplement product company, and it's in just his niche spot where. So I think he's found this sweet spot between business and pleasure, right? Where he's kind of like mending the two together. He's able to enjoy the community on all different aspects, and it's great. I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Keep the comments coming. Like, share, and subscribe. Without further ado, Chase Hammond. Chase, it's so nice to see you again. Thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I haven't seen you in quite a while. I guess I haven't seen you since around maybe Summit 200. We went for a run earlier this year, but man, you have had quite the season, both athletically and professionally. And we want to dive right into a little bit of all of 2024, if possible. Gosh, I don't even know where to begin. But I guess before we begin about 2024, let's talk a little bit about how you got to ultra running and
Yeah.
and how you found yourself in 2024 doing the Triple Crown, putting on a ton of events, and running a supplement company.
Dude, I originally got into ultra running. I guess my first marathon would have been I think it was 2014. And I did that purely because I loved hiking. I loved coming out to Colorado doing the 14ers, but they always kicked my ass so much that I wanted to be in a little better shape for it. Just loved being outdoors on the trails, though. And long story short, it just snowballed into eventually being a trail running thing. I got really obsessed with ultra running and did my first 100 in, I believe it was 2018. And then the next year was 2 years later was the Moab 240. And I think around that same time was when we were kicking off with the supplement company. And then also that's about the same time we kicked off with our first race at Hell Creek in Kansas. And that first race, we never intended to put on another race after that. It was just kind of for fun. It was on my home course. It was the course that I trained on. I thought it was the coolest course in Kansas. So we threw a race on, and we fell in love with race directing at that point. We loved seeing it from a different perspective. We loved seeing the people cross the line. I had been there before, but seeing those people cross the line and being able to support them as they go after their goals was a totally different vibe for me. And like I said, fell in love with it. Now we have 7 races, put on 7 races this year. In addition to the Triple Crown and the supplements, it has been a freaking crazy year, dude. Absolutely.
Yeah, no kidding. Jeez, my gosh, you've been busy. Yeah, I know. I don't even know where to start at. I mean, like you did the Triple Crown of 200s. You got 7 races. You also got Ultraverse supplements. I think you got 3-4 products in that lineup, and promoting that and selling that. Yeah, maybe let's start with Ultraverse. Let's start with with Ultraverse supplement, and tell us a little bit about how you got into Ultraverse and where did that even stem from?
Yeah, so I have my master's degree in nutrition, and I was originally always going to, actually, as I was going through the program, I was going to start up a consultation business. That was the original plan, and I was always focusing on endurance athletes the entire time I was going through my graduate program. And then in clinicals, I decided I wanted to shift that into a supplement company just because I was reading up a lot on different supplements and different substances that could potentially lead to optimal performance in ultra endurance running specifically. And I just saw a lot of holes in what was currently out on the market. And so that's kind of where the supplement company stemmed from. My wife also has her graduate degree in nutrition. So we thought it would be a cool thing to do with our degree, something to get use out of it and something to where we could kind of be our own bosses.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's really exciting that you're in the space and that you're really trying to, create quality products for ultra endurance athletes. Let's kind of dive a little bit into the race series, or not the series, but the 7 races that you have. Maybe tell us what they are and the distances that they are.
Sure. So our first one of the year is Eternal Damnation at Hell Creek. It's an area called Hell Creek. So we've got this race called Hell Creek. We've got Eternal Damnation. The reason we call them these things is because the area is called Hell Creek. Hell Creek State, Wilson State Park, Hell Creek area. Eternal Damnation is a last man standing backyard style event. So it goes forever until there's only one person left. Then the next one of the year would be the Sticks. That is at my wife's parents' farmstead in Kansas. So that's why it's called the Sticks. It is in BFE. It is in the middle of nowhere. There's a 6, 12, 24, 48, and 72-hour event at that one. It's literally a 2-mile route around Casey's dad's pasture that he mows with his tractor. And then you can do an optional 4.3 mile loop. But that's just a party as much as it is a run. It's a lot of fun though. The next one after that would be the summit now that we incorporated it just this year. The summit's in July. 200-mile race, non-repetitive race around Summit County, Colorado, which you came out and marked for, helped us with. Really appreciate that. And then we've got the Hell Creek 50K, same place as Eternal Damnation. That's our shortest race. Is a 50K. That's the only one that's not a multi-day race. And then we've got Front Range Ultra Days, which was also new last year. That's in Loveland, Colorado, around a city park. That's got a 100-mile, a 200-mile. It's got a 6, a 12, a 24, a 48, a 72, and a 100-hour race. And then let's see, we've got Hell Creek, which was our original one, which is now. I'm sorry, we've got the Cowboy 200 after that.
Oh.
We've got the Cowboy 200. That's a big one. I don't know how I forgot that one. That's in Nebraska, 200-mile and 100-mile, non-repetitive, all along the Cowboy Trail. And lastly is the Hell Creek. We've got 140, 100-mile, 100K, and a 20-mile at that one. So,
yeah, just a couple T-shirts, a couple race bibs. You guys are just
exactly.
just get them out there, get them running, right?
But yeah, that is all between April and October. So now that October is almost done, then we're done until April. So we've got a little bit of time to breathe. But in that time, especially with the Triple Crown races all wedged in there and a lot of travel, man, it was wild. And of course, we don't put on any races close to home. We have to travel to all of them.
Chase, I got to coach a business, and I think in some form or fashion, I think at least one of my athletes has raced every one of your races somewhere along the way. And actually, I think a couple of my athletes have won some of your races.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I'm sure of that actually.
Yep.
Yeah, you got this little cult following going, and it's not little anymore. It's actually kind of growing. I could see it on social media. I could see repeat offenders coming back, wanting more. They're signing up for multiple races. You guys are doing a great job on the social media level of promoting those events. And it seems to be dominoing, which is in the right direction, in a good way, and building momentum. So yeah, it's great. I have my eyeballs set on potentially maybe a Summit 200 just because it's near my house and in my backyardish area. I did help you out last year with crew, or I flagged 75 miles or something like that for 6 sections.
I think you flagged more than that because at the end of the day, you needed like a couple miles to get your 100-mile week. Just I can't remember
I didn't.
What you did, but you didn't need much.
Then, on top of that, let's throw in the Triple Crown. What was the Triple Crown this year? It was 3 200s through Destination Trail. Yep. You have Tahoe.
Tahoe in June,
Tahoe in June, and then you have Bigfoot in July or August. Is that
Bigfoot in August?
And then just Moab. Yeah, October 8th was or 11th was Moab 240.
Yes,
yeah.
Sir.
So man, you have been just crazy busy. Tell us a little bit about the desire to do the Triple Crown.
Yeah. So my first 200 was in 2020, and it was actually the Moab 240. I'd only done a couple hundreds at that point, but it was just so freaking hard and so long. And during the race, I told myself I'm never doing this shit again. But when I came across the line after Moab, I was just totally depleted mentally and physically. And I just felt amazing because I just felt like I gave everything I possibly had at that race, and that was just an amazing feeling. And after that, it kind of snowballed, and I just want to do 200s now. I mean, I'll do other races, but I am by far the most interested in the 200-mile distance. And so at that point, I had a dream of someday doing the Triple Crown, doing all 3 races by Destination Trail in 1 year. And that I finally got to it this year. I attempted Cocodona a couple times, had some injuries. I've been dealing with injuries the last couple of years and had a heat stroke at one of those races. And I wanted to get to the Triple Crown last year, but I wanted to go back and reattempt Cocodona. I DNF'd it again. And so I said, screw it. I don't feel like taking that on again right now. What I really want to do is the Triple Crown. I'm not going to limit my goals because I haven't had much success in the last couple of years. I'm going to go for it anyway. And went after it, and it was a very difficult thing, but I mean, it worked out really well, and couldn't be happier now that it's over.
Have you changed anything in your preparation leading up to the Triple Crown compared to when you were trying to do the Cocodona 250?
The main thing that changed that helped me out is I went and actually got an official diagnosis on a knee. Some issues that I was having. I actually had a partially torn MCL, and I was treating that myself, thinking it was an IT band issue. And so I finally got into doing the right exercises and stuff like that. It was something that wouldn't flare up until like mile 60 during a race, and it would mess me up for a few weeks after the race. And then I'd be fine during training, and then during a race, 50 or 60 miles is when I'd feel it. So it was hard to tell if it was ready to go. Tahoe was the last, was the first race that I got to 60 miles since I started doing the MCL exercises and stuff. So going into that, I was really, really worried that it was going to flare up again. But it never bothered me the entire year now that I've started doing the correct things to fix it.
So you resolved it only with some kind of PT, or you had to have more? Yeah, okay.
Yep, PT. Rest from the last injury. The last time it flared up, took about a full month off, and that was about in December. That was actually after ATY. Brian, I saw you out there, and you saw me limping along. And then after that, I took about a month off and did some hardcore PT and slowly got back into it. So the training season wasn't quite as long as I wanted it to be for the Triple Crown by any means. And then, with the race schedule, after each race, very little time to actually recover and little time to train, but more importantly, I think little time to recover because I'm going to these other races, race directing them. When me and Casey race direct races, we're up for about 20 to 22 hours while that race is going on. So if it's a 3-day race, we're up for 20, 22 hours each day for that race. Either me or Casey is there for every single finisher at the finish line. We kind of make that a priority of ours. We'll never miss a finisher. So.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the time to recover, you need to be able to sleep. Otherwise, I mean, it's so basic. If you don't have enough sleep, your recovery will be crap. Like, there's no magical solution against that. I'm curious, because I don't know the calendar so well. How much time is it between Tahoe and Bigfoot and Moab? Is it like 6 weeks each or 4 weeks, something like that?
So it's 3 and 5 months. So I think Tahoe was like June 12th, and then Bigfoot was like the first week of August, I think, and then
it's maybe 7 weeks.
Yeah, okay. And then I think the longest period is between Bigfoot and Moab because Moab
that's
was
probably like 8 or 10 or 8 or 9.
Yeah, so three in about a 5-month period.
I think we should dive into the specific anyway of the race. But before we forget, I'm actually curious. Are you planning to go back for Cocodona, especially if it sounds like you might have resolved the issue that was impairing you from doing it, right?
I do want to go back to Cocodona, and I was actually on the wait list until just a couple weeks ago, and I was at number 7, so I was almost certainly getting in. But I pulled myself off of it just because I'm not that interested in it right now, and I try to do things that make my hair stand up, give me goosebumps, and I just
that 200 miler you don't have. Yeah, you don't do a 200 miler every week, so you have to really want it. It's not
exactly.
Not trivial. Curious what has changed your mind about that?
Honestly, I think it's because after the Triple Crown, I kind of desire to get into a little bit smaller races for a little while. I kind of missed the smaller amount of people at races and kind of the vibe that you can get at some of those. And it's not because I don't like the big races. I absolutely love the big races, the Triple Crown. It's just my mind tells me I'm in the mood for something different. You know what I mean?
So you're saying that size does matter.
Yeah, sometimes.
It's not the size; it's how you use it. I actually don't know what's the size of those races, the destination trail race.
About 300, 250 to 300, I think is what they cap at. I think that's right, Brian.
Roughly. I actually haven't been to the other two. I've only been to Moab, but I think Moab was 240, 250 this year, something right around there. 238.
I think they're all about the same.
Yeah,
well, I think they're roughly
the race that you might
number.
not want to do is Diagonale des Fous, which I just did, and it's 3,000 runner on the 100 mile. A lot of single track.
That is crazy.
Don't go there.
Yeah, and Cocodona's getting bigger, because they're trying to get additional permits too. And then you got the other two races in there, and they're trying to increase their permits for the 250 by, I can't remember what it is, 100 or 200.
I think the format plays. I mean, I don't want to dive too deep into it, but I think the format plays a little bit into it too. Like Cocodona is so spread out, or it's a point to point that it becomes so spread out that. Oh yeah. I think after 24 hours, actually, I didn't really think there was very many people on the course at all because I didn't see very many people on the course at all. It was just so diluted, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think, and I don't know for you, Chase, but for me, because I like the big race sometimes, and I like the small race, but it's not only about the people on the trail or the number of people. But also the vibe of the race itself is very different. I think of Loup-Garou, which I've mentioned so many times in Louisiana. The aid station is run by her neighbor, and then the other one is the cousin, and everyone on first name basis. And when you finish, you get a hug, and it's really non-commercial. Whereas even though Cocodona and Aravaipa, I think they do a great job at keeping a good vibe at their event, they remain a huge company compared to what you do, Chase, with your 7 race. It's not comparable. It becomes a little corporate. You have live stream, you have vendors, you have professional runner, you have a shit show a little bit. So the vibe is different, and I see that for sure. And it's not just it's not just the number of runner, but number of runner will attract attention, which becomes more corporate, more sponsor, more commercial. So do you have events in mind? Just so we can give a shout out to these races, and then they will become big, unfortunately. So maybe we should keep it a secret. Yeah.
So there's a new 200 in Arkansas that's going to be taking place in November, which I am interested in. It's in addition to the Hare Mountain 100. I think they just add to that course another 100 miles. That's a good time for me because it's out of my race season. So that sounds nice. But then also I've been looking at Infinitus in Vermont, which is a very small race. And I've heard a lot of good things about it. And they have a lot of different distances. They have a 200, which is probably, or a 250, which is probably what I would do. Wow. They also have an 888K, which is, I don't know how far that is. That's a very long way.
It sounds like about 500 miles, but
yes, yeah. And they have one of those. I'm not going to tackle that, but because I don't want to be out there for 10 days. But those are the two I'm looking at right now. But I'm going to kind of let it ferment in my off season here a little bit to try to decide which one I actually want to do. But my mind was made up that I just wasn't getting excited for Cocodona, So
that's fine. That's cool. Hey, we want to talk about the Triple Crown, but I do have one last burning question, and it's just like in my head. I don't know why. If you had to do, or could only do one Ultraverse race, one of your own races, but only one of them, which one are you picking?
Oh, it'd have to be the Summit, man. That's been a dream race of ours since we started this gig, because I vacationed in Summit County since I was a little kid. I've done almost every hike in that area that you can do. I think it's a beautiful area. We wanted to knock off some other races, get some 200-mile race directing experience under our belt before we pulled the trigger on it. But like I've always said, that is my dream race that I'll never run. So I love the high altitude mountains, man. I love the alpine environment. So that would be the one.
All right. Sold. You sold me on it.
Right on.
I mean, I was already sold on it, but anyway. Hey, let's dive into Tahoe 200. It's, what'd you say, like second week of June or something like that?
Yes.
Who'd you go up there with? Maybe a brief recap of what it looked like for you. What were some strategies that you thought you were going to go in with that obviously fell apart, and then you had to shift into different strategies by the end of it?
Yeah. So I went in with my usual crew, I guess. Casey, my wife, and her mom and dad. I mean, those are the people who follow me to every single race. Basically, they followed me to all my 200s, and they are an absolutely awesome crew. I usually don't have many pacers. Casey might pace me for the last 20 to 30 miles, but that's how it typically is. And then they'll meet me at every single crewed aid station that they can get to. Going in, as far as strategy is concerned, like I said, with my knee and all the questions surrounding it going in, my strategy was purely to survive that race and to get across the finish line. And that really was my strategy for the entire Triple Crown. I'm no Geraldo Sobertis. I'm not going to go out there and compete at those kind of races. My goal was to get across the line at every single one of them. We had a strategy that is very adaptable as far as sleep and times that we want to be at aid stations. But I've done it enough times to know that all that shit's going to go out the window at some point during the race, so we're very adaptable.
Not a matter of like if, but when, right?
Exactly. But going into Tahoe, I was super motivated. I was excited to get out there, which wasn't the case at Bigfoot. And everything went really well. My feet hurt like a mother, but I mean, that was really what slowed me down the most was my feet. But
and
overall,
what were the
everything went
conditions
really
like
good.
this year? What were the conditions like this year at Tahoe? Was it still snow up there?
There was snow. Yeah, there was large patches of snow, but nothing that would really slow you down too much. There were some slick spots. I found that poles really helped in those spots. The longest stretch of snow was probably like 100 yards. So nothing big. Good. And then low 80s during the day, and then night was just beautiful. I never wore a long sleeve until the last night. It got pretty cold. But other than that, I couldn't ask for better weather. The best weather of the three, for sure. Tahoe's a race I would definitely go back to if it becomes the full route again. I wouldn't go back for the out and back. But if it becomes the loop again, I would definitely go back.
So you got a long summer planned. You got work going on. You got all these other events. You're dropping a Tahoe with the in-laws and the wife. And are you going to like 85%, just trying to like hold on for knowing that you have a whole summer's worth of events and work and races coming up?
Yeah, I mean, for most of that race, I was holding back a little bit, and definitely for the first 100 miles because I was very leery about the knee situation. So I was just really trying to be low impact on that thing. But then towards the end of the race, the last 30 or 40 miles, I did turn it on a little bit, and I tried to push myself and get across the line because I want to get across the line feeling like I left all of it or most of it out there every race. Otherwise I just don't feel real good about myself. But yeah, I was definitely being conservative for a while in that race, knowing the kind of year I had ahead of me. And when I say conservative, I'm talking about my feet and avoiding injuries, things that I know I might have trouble recovering for before the next race, not necessarily soreness and things like that,
Any standout moments? Anything you want to share? Any funny moments? Any special friends you made? Anything stick out?
The only thing that sticks out to me about Tahoe, I forget about 90% of the shit during these races. I remember the lows, the really terrible points, and I remember the really high points. And at Tahoe, there was a point where I just thought I was done. I was absolutely miserable. I was hallucinating. I saw gorillas during broad daylight. Daylight hallucinations. And I just thought I got to the aid station. I just didn't know how I was going to bounce back from it because, I mean, when you're that deprived of sleep and your head's not in the right space, you just think that there's no coming back from it. But it's amazing what, especially in the 200, with laying down for an hour and a half nap, 2 hour nap, and some food will do. You will wake up and you'll feel like a new man. So I did that. I woke up. I was in a totally different headspace. And then the next two sections, I was in flow like I've never been before. I was just tearing it up out there. I felt like I was tearing it up at least. And, and I was just grateful to be out there, and I was perfectly comfortable being uncomfortable. And it was just an amazing feeling. And so to go from that kind of low to that kind of high, at about 140 miles in, that was really cool. And that is something that I will definitely always remember from that race. And of course, when you're in flow, it's not lasting long. So you got to embrace it while it's there. And it didn't last long. There, a couple sections later, I was right back into hell. So.
I'm curious, since you mentioned it about sleep, what was your sleep strategy coming in? Especially you have a lot of experience. Curious how you approached it.
Yeah, so I've learned from this. I just feel like everyone is different as far as sleep is concerned. Some people can get by with really little. I can't get by with 30-minute power naps. I try to lay down when I lay down for about an hour and a half at a time, and I almost always do that at crewed aid stations where I can jump in my crew vehicle, lay down, get a full sleep cycle in there. And so for Tahoe, I think we planned on about 5 hours total. I think we probably ended up doing 6.5. I've never actually hit my sleep goal. It's always been higher. And then I think for Bigfoot, I think we ended up right at 6.5 as well. And then Moab, I think we ended up at a little bit more than that. I think we were probably more like 7.5 hours for Moab. But yeah, that's the sleep strategy. Typically, I don't take a lot of trail naps. I actually did at Moab. I'll usually limit those to about 25 minutes because from what I've researched, you don't want to get into those deep sleep phases. You want to limit it to 30 minutes or less. And if you go over that, ideally an hour and a half so you can get through a full sleep cycle. So that's kind of been my strategy with it, and it's worked pretty well for me.
Chase, how did you finish, or I guess how was the knee at the finish of Tahoe? How was everything holding up? What did recovery look like thereafter?
Knee never bothered me at all. The knee never bothered me at all at any of the 3 races. So feel really, really good about that. Recovery was absolute garbage because, right away I am turning around and putting on races. But, trying to get some extra sleep for like the week or 2 that we had before we had to pack up and get rolling again. But hiking has been my main source of exercise throughout the 5 months that the Triple Crown has been going on. Not a whole lot of running, no high intensity stuff. I'm really looking forward to getting back into the higher intensity stuff. But yeah, mostly hiking here in Grand Junction, just picking out some nice trails and going on 4 or 5 mile hikes, sprinkle a run in there every once in a while. But I just knew that I wasn't getting enough actual rest and recovery between races to really push it very much. And, going into Bigfoot, I'm sure we'll get into that, but I was experiencing a lot of burnout and losing the desire to want to train, which I've never experienced before. I love training just as much as I love racing, maybe more. I don't race a whole lot typically until this year. And I could just feel that I wasn't enjoying the sport very much anymore. And I've never experienced that. So.
Sure. I had a similar experience. Last year I did 4 100s, pretty tight together. Maybe not as tight as somebody like Simon over there, but but otherwise. I did 4 100s, and I felt like all I was doing was recovering. Like I didn't have any like fun in the process, and I think I enjoy the process as much or more than the races themselves.
Same.
It's same thing, yeah, similar.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, usually I'll have 2A races a year. Usually spread out by 6 months apart. That's always how I've done it. I haven't been in the game very long, but this seemed like a lot. And I think it was mainly a lot because of the race directing schedule too. It would have been a different ball game without that. But
yeah, I'm the opposite. I hate training, so
yeah,
I love being in a permanent cycle of
recovery,
taper, race, recovery, taper, race. But
I know you're right.
Real life also
like
comes into play, and that's for me. That's the biggest. Like, oh my god, I don't want to go running. I don't want to be racing right now. Is because I haven't had time to breathe because of work.
Yes.
So if I could quit work, then I'd be good. But
yep. Yeah.
Work is my sponsor right now. So
yeah. Well, as a race director, I love the people that just love to race and race and race and race and race.
Yeah, yeah, we should have a membership fee or something.
That's right.
A bundle discount.
Yeah.
That's right.
Chase, did we go into Bigfoot? Bigfoot had some changes this year. I think last minute they went out and back.
Yeah.
And out and back. Out and back and out and back. Not
and back.
4 times, but just 2 times. I know it was miscommunicated somewhere along the line initially that it was 4 times through, but it's actually just 2 times through.
Yeah, I think where people were confused is you do every section 4 times because it's out and back, out and back. So you hit every section 4 times, but it's really 2 50-mile out and backs. But yeah, we learned that on the way there. We had all our drop bags packed. We had a plan. And when I say a plan, it's a very loose plan. I go into these things and I don't even know what the hell the sections are. My wife geeks out on it, but I'm not one to geek out on races. Like, I will learn about the section right before we do it. How long is it? How much elevation does it have? Whatever, because it doesn't do me any good to geek out on it. But we had all these things packed, and she had a plan. And then on the way out there, on the way to Washington, they change it up because of fires. Absolutely nothing Destination Trail could have done differently any better. I mean, they did the perfect thing to do. And they put a hell of a lot of work into it. So, but it sucked. You know, it sucked for me. It sucked for the runners because that was the one I was really looking forward to the most. I was really looking forward to that course because I love the climbing. Climbing's my thing. I like the more technical climbing it is, the more fun I'm having. The more I can turn it into a hike, the more I like it. And so then you're changing it from that to what a lot of people agree are the 3 shittiest sections of Bigfoot are the last 3 sections. I heard that from a lot of people. Like I said, nothing they could do, but it also leads to 40 miles of pavement. I absolutely hate rounding pavement. I haven't ran 40 miles of pavement in the last 4 years, probably combined. And on top of all that, that was, like I mentioned before, I just didn't feel like training going into Bigfoot, and I've never felt like that. Like, it was hard to motivate myself to get out the door, even though I knew I needed to. And it was the first race ever that I wasn't actually looking forward to towing the line at. You know, I didn't want to be there. I would have pushed it back a month if I could. Normally, I'm chomping at the bit for a race to be here, you know. So that was a different vibe. It was a very difficult race, the hardest race mentally that I've ever done. My body felt really good the whole time, except for my feet, of course. But I wanted to quit, and there was a point during that race where there was absolutely nothing wrong with me except for up here, you know. And I think if my crew wouldn't have been there, if I would have been tackling that thing solo, I would have said fuck it, and I would have quit because I didn't want to let them down. But I just had no motivation for it. I was out there going after a dream, and I was willing to let it all go just because I just did not give a shit for a very long time in that race, which was a different deal for me.
Yeah, I think Simon can relate to that. I think a little bit. He mentioned that maybe it was Bigfoot this year, one of those, or no, Bighorn. I'm sorry, Bighorn.
Yep.
And Nora kind of helped him get along. His significant other helped him get through that one. So there were some struggles. Obviously, there was a flip flop, there was a change of course, unforeseen. You know, nothing they could do. They did their best, like you mentioned.
Absolutely.
I know there were some struggles there. Maybe you weren't feeling it. What were some maybe of the positive outcomes of having the out and back format? Were there any pros to it that you could think of that you had?
I think the only pro would be that you saw people a lot more, you know. And like I said, I don't have many pacers, and if I would have been totally out there in my head, which my head was a mess, obviously, and totally spread out, not seeing people for hours, like sometimes will happen at Moab, you know. You might not see people for a couple of hours out there if you don't have a pacer. I think it would have been a little bit more difficult at times because I've grown to know quite a few people in the ultra running community. I see a lot of people I know at all these races. So it does help to have a friend come up and pat you on the back, tell you you're doing good, have a little conversation with them. That can lift the spirits just a little bit, for sure. But I mean, I found strength in the fact in the second half that, I don't want to be here. I don't have to be here. It's up to me if I quit. And I don't really give a shit right now, but I'm going to do it anyway, because you don't always do what you want to do. Sometimes you just got to tough it out and you got to do it. And I figured, I kind of turned my focus to that. You got to figure out shit that motivates you during these things. And sometimes it's harder than others. So I figured if I could do it despite all those things, then it would show that maybe in that particular race, I had more mental toughness than any other race that I've ever done. And that's what it's always been about for me. It's never been about times or anything like that. I'm out there trying to push my mind to new heights,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for you, but for me, even in Brian is right. There was one race in particular that I just never. It's nothing wrong with the race, but I'm just like, I don't know. I would just not do it right now. And it's not like you won't be in pain. Like, you will be in pain. You will struggle very much at some point. You're in extreme pain, and if your motivation is it's pretty tough to go on. But at least I was still able to reflect and say, all right. And it's true, Nora helped me, but all right, I really don't care right now. Sorry, I hit that. I really don't care right now. I could quit, fine. But I could tell that, in a week or two, I will maybe regret that I pulled the plug just because I was not feeling it. And you don't know, maybe in 30 minutes I'll feel better about that. And then you're 16 hour in. I was like, well, I'm 16 hour in. I might as well just continue.
Yes.
But I was able to convince myself that it's true that I don't care right now. But I will care in the future about giving up.
Absolutely.
And that was helping me go forward a little bit, because it's also a broader picture in your case. If you're pulling the plug on Bigfoot for many reasons, they change the course, kind of sucks, and I'm not in the mood right now. You're also pulling the plug on the Triple Crown, which you're pretty far in. If you finish Bigfoot, you only have one race to go. Like, you're almost done with it. So, like, let's keep pushing. So, yeah, I think it's easy to feel like you were weak mentally, but at the same time, like, you did do it. And recognizing our own kind of shortcoming, but overcoming that is a sign of strength, I think, not a sign of weakness, and being in tune with yourself and how you're feeling. We're not always super alpha and perfect, and sometimes we're a little bitch, and that's okay, and just push through. I'm not saying you're a little bitch, but I was a little bitch at Bighorn for sure myself.
I know it's not about time. We'll move on to questions. I know it's not about time, but let's just, because there's a time factor in it. Let's go back to Tahoe. What was the hours that you were out there?
Let's see. What did I do Tahoe in? Shit. I think it was 92 hours. I think I did Tahoe in 92 hours.
Okay. Then you're at Bigfoot, and you're not feeling it at the starting line. And how many hours are you out there?
I think that was like 84 hours. That was my best 200, and which is kind of bizarre. But I wasn't feeling it. And my best.
I mean, so 82 hours, you're battling your own lack of desire to be there. I mean, like that's a challenge. I mean, all in itself, and it does show some mental fortitude and the ability to push through and do things that you're not committed to right at the moment, at least in your head.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was much worse the first half. Once I got 100 down, I'm like, I didn't go through all that shit to not do the last 100. So it made it a little bit easier, and at 100, I kind of knew that I felt it was going to happen, and I knew I wasn't going to quit anymore. The first 100 was very tough.
All right. Any highlights? Even though it was a struggle for you to be there and kind of feel the desire to do it. But any highlights that you recall from the race itself?
I always say that going into the 200s, it's all about ups and downs. You're going to have so many ups and downs. But Bigfoot, it was unique for me because it was all down. There was no ups. I had no fun moments. I hated every step of it. And so I guess that was the highlight of it, that it was just one huge miserable experience. But after I got through it, it was awesome because I got through a 200-mile miserable experience. So, I mean, looking back, it's one of the races that I'm probably the most proud of.
That's cool. It is cool. I mean, again, 82 hours or 84 hours or whatever it was is a long time to not want to be there and continue to do something. Recovery, it's
total shit again.
Would you say it's August, first week of August or so, roughly?
Yeah.
What does it look like between August and your work life and your busy, hectic schedule to the first or second week of October?
Immediately jumping into Front Range Ultra Days after that. We had like a week home, jump into Front Range Ultra Days, which is a 100-hour event, and then get that done. We have another week home, turn around, head to Nebraska for 2 weeks to put on the Cowboy 200. After that, you got about 2 weeks before Moab. So, I mean, it was wild at that point. That was the grinder right there. That was the big part. And Casey helped me out a lot at the races. I ended up getting more sleep than her this year, probably at the races, just because she knew that I needed that to get through the Triple Crown, and she knew how much it meant to me. She knew I mean, even just a couple more hours a night at those races, getting 20 hours instead of, or getting 4 hours instead of 2 hours a night is very helpful. So, yeah, it was wild.
And then I was at Moab, and you were at Moab. I don't know if I ever saw you at Moab.
I never saw you, dude. I was looking for you too.
It's not it's 238 people, but and all their friends, but yes, I was surprised after the fact. I was like, man, I don't think I ever saw Chase.
Basically, going into that, I think I knew about 15 people. I went through the names, and I think I saw everyone that I knew except for you. So I don't know how the hell that happened.
I don't know. I was there. I mean, not for long, but I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry about that, man. I talked to Lisa Marie and Renee because, as you know, they were my pacers, and I was asking about you. I was constantly asking about you. We had a list of names that I constantly asked my crew about when I got to aid stations.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I've probably talked at length about this, but short story is I made a good, smart decision to kind of save my legs for more running later on in life than and run next year as opposed to risk injury. So,
been there. I think we've all been there at some point.
Let's talk about yours. Maybe not Simon. I don't think Simon's been there.
An animal, I guess.
I'm still young. I'm good.
He's still got those young knees.
Exactly.
Moab, what's the plan there? So we'll go back. You had the same format. I believe you had the same format for Bigfoot. You had your in-laws and Casey.
Yes, but this time a lot of people came out to help me in Moab. This is the first time ever that has happened. I actually had a pacer the entire time that you could have one. Like I said, usually 20, 30 miles. I had a pacer for 170 miles at Moab. 4 different pacers, Jeff Reese from Kansas, who's ran a lot of our races, and then Lisa Marie and Renee, who I believe you coach, and then JJ Goodrich from California, who is just a fantastic, super fast runner. I'm pretty sure he had never went that slow in his entire life. But I had an awesome group of people, and I needed it too, man, because I'm not sure that I would have got through that one without my pacers. Unlike Bigfoot, I was motivated for that one going in. I think a lot of it I was exhausted, but I think a lot of it had to do with, okay, this is it. This is the final leg of the Triple Crown. Nothing is going to stop me from getting across that line no matter what. I'm going to go out here in an ambulance. That's the only thing that's going to stop me. So, but having those pacers was tremendously helpful. But other than them, yes, same crew, Casey, Kim, and Ken came out. And they kind of handled all the crewing stuff and then just brought pacers out and switched me up.
How did it go? I didn't see it, so and you finished, and I didn't, so it went better for you than it did for me. But generally, how'd it go? I mean, I don't think I heard from those guys that you had too many struggles, or at least Lisa Marie or Renee. that you had some significant struggles or anything to note or noteworthy. But let's
Yeah,
hear it from the
the
source.
first day it was hot as hell, as you know. I was cramping up quite a bit the first day, and I was having some stomach issues. I wasn't able to take my normal fuel, and I just barely ate it all for about 24 hours. I barely consumed any calories for about 24 hours there. Basically from about 10 a.m. the first day till about 10 a.m. the next day, almost nothing. So that depleted me a lot, but I was able to take care of the cramping and stuff like that by cameling up at some aid stations, resting for a while. I felt like I dealt with the heat really well going into that first day. I told myself I'm not running a single step until the sun goes down, because like I said, it was all about crossing the line for me at this one. So I was willing to go out there conservatively. Last time I went to Moab, I almost died the first day because I went too fast and it was hotter than hell out. Took it easy that first day, stuck to the strategy, didn't run a step till the sun went down, and felt like I set myself up really well to be successful later in the race. Kind of was conservative until I got pacers. And then, there wasn't any extraordinary low points the rest of the race. I think that there would have been if I didn't have some pacers at certain points during the night. I thought about it out there on the course. I'm like, man, if I didn't have Lisa here, if I didn't have Renee here, this would really suck right now, which is bizarre because I'm used to not ever having anyone there. But I just think I entered Moab with so much mental exhaustion already that it was very difficult. And I did find myself having to take some trail naps, which I usually don't have to because I just absolutely could not stay awake. I was sleeping on my feet, So that was the biggest struggle. And then just the foot thing, which is always a struggle for me. And it probably is just a 200-mile thing, but it's not blisters. It's like deep pain in my feet, like bruising, or it almost feels like I have stress fractures. I don't, but it feels like it. So as a coach, here's a question for you. How do you solve that, man? Is it more mileage? Is it pounding your feet into submission during training?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to diagnose just from that alone, but it sounds like you've done that in the race, right? So I don't know if that's conditioning thing, and I don't know if it's just it's hard to say, but depending on what you're doing with your shoes and your foot care, and you're doing those protocols in the training, and were you running on the same type of terrain and putting in decent miles, or were you just recovering from race to race and now you're at the third one and you haven't put in some hiking miles like you had mentioned earlier?
This was probably my lowest mileage year since I started ultraing, just because I was in recovery mode the whole time and so damn busy. I mean, it was my highest mileage year as far as racing, but probably my lowest mileage year overall. So I think that probably had something to do with it.
Chase, I wanted to dissect a little bit about the pacer situation, which you had mentioned a few times. That's a change for you. Obviously, they helped you out, and you found a good resource in recruiting pacers for every section available. How did it go, though? I mean, like, how different was it for you because you don't use them in other events? So, like, were there awkward moments? Were you being social with them? How specifically were they helping you get through? I mean, obviously, probably keeping you on course and navigating and those sorts of things, even though you are familiar with like 90% of the course, like I was as well, because of the changes from last year. But anyway, tell us about the pacer situation and how it differed, and what aspects you enjoyed of it, and maybe where you found it to be maybe a little cumbersome.
Honestly, I never found it to be cumbersome at all. There was never a point where I didn't want a pacer there while they were there. And they don't help me with navigating at all. When I'm being paced, I like to just be in front because they're not actually pacing me. They're just there for company, basically. And my watch tells me where to go. I mean, I never have any trouble getting off course. Put it in your watch right. I just it's never an issue.
Even when you're seeing gorillas during the day?
I started to get off course, but my watch told me I was off. So. But my wife was luckily with me during the gorilla section. She could confirm that they actually were not there. But yeah, I mean, the Pacers were absolutely amazing. And going in, I didn't know. I thought it might be awkward. But I think when you're absolutely in the pain cave and suffering, there's just no room for giving a shit about stuff being awkward. It's like all your effort is focused on one foot in front of the other. And I said this in my Facebook post about it. It was a really cool experience to get to know these people. I already knew these people. I considered them all friends. A lot of them had run my races. Some were, one of them was an ambassador of ours. But I had never experienced anything with them like this. So it's very raw and real when you're out there just suffering with someone. And like I said, there's no room for bullshit. There's no room for masks or anything fake. They kept me company. And I can't even remember all the stuff we talked about, but I know that they kept me awake a lot of times, and they helped me through some really tough times. So it was a really cool way to get to know them on a deeper level as well.
So you head out to Vermont for next year to go do the 200 out there. Are you taking Pacers or are you not taking Pacers?
I haven't decided yet. I don't know if my wife would make the trip on that one. That one's just so far. So I might not even have a crew for that one, which would be different for me as far as 200-mile plus distance is concerned. But it is like I think it ends up being a 16-mile loop. I might be wrong about that one. So you actually hit the same aid station over and over and over and over and over again, which I'm not used to either. So it kind of eliminates the need for crew a little bit. But that would be something different for me. It'd be a unique challenge as well. But I know some friends that basically go out there and do that one every year, speak very highly of it. And I've already had one friend, Gary Shaw, offer to crew me at that one if I do decide to go.
What was your time at Moab?
Moab was 104 hours, I think. And the first time I did it, I actually finished right after you in 2020. And I think I was at like 95:45. And I didn't know you.
I was 9.
And I didn't know you at the point, obviously. But if you go and look at the results.
No, you were right in front of me.
You? I can't remember.
I was 96, okay. I thought.
We were like 10, 15 minutes apart, dude.
Right there.
That's all I know.
Oh, okay. And we never met each other there either. I've never seen you in Moab.
No. I mean, if we go to Moab, we won't see each other. That's just how it is. But yeah, I went into Moab saying a 100-hour goal, for this one. I had no intention to beat 2020 because it was just totally different year, just much more accumulated exhaustion.
And to be honest, a few extra miles at it, change the course, a little more different Absolutely. High point with Monticello Lake, and then the Pole Canyon section that's been rerouted.
I will say that Monticello
adding in the full distance.
I will say that Monticello was by far my favorite section of the entire course. I love that section. It was so fucking cool, man. I loved it.
I got to go see it. Because I didn't get to see it.
Go do it, man.
It's almost Halloween, and your schedules went from 1,000 miles an hour to school zone 20 miles an hour. Like what does it look like now? What have you been up to?
Dude, I have been relaxing for once, and I'm not very good at relaxing either. Even when I have the opportunity, I'm always been terrible about that. I drive my wife absolutely freaking crazy because she can sit down and read a book, and I got to be doing shit all the time. But I've been doing it. I've been good at it lately. I just feel like I earned it. I got to feel like I earn it, I guess. I've got back into some old hobbies that I used to do. I've been playing some video games, which I haven't done for years. I've got a couple tarantulas. I'm kind of raised tarantulas as a hobby. So I got back into that, which I haven't done since my early 20s. So I'm enjoying it, dude. I'm starting to get a little antsy, though. My feet are still healing a little, but I can feel the antsiness coming. It won't be long now. until I'll be a total pain in the ass again to the wife.
So one thing we forgot to mention is that you actually lived in Glenwood Springs for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half or so, and this summer you also moved an hour and a half away to Grand Junction, all in this summer season as well. How are you dealing with Junction?
We love Junction. I mean, we've barely been here, but so far we love it. There's a lot to do. The trail system, as you know, is absolutely fantastic. The winters are a little shorter, I'm assuming. I haven't been here for a winter yet. But
well, it snowed here today, Chase.
It did not snow here today. It rained, but it was nice. We went for a hike today.
No, it snowed here today.
So the winters were a little long for me in Glenwood, but an absolutely beautiful place. I loved Glenwood. But really, really digging Grand Junction right now. Plan on being here for a while.
You got some other hobbies, raising tarantulas and some other stuff going on. If you weren't ultra running, Chase, if you weren't in the sport, if you weren't making supplements for ultra runners, if you weren't putting on ultra running events, what would you be doing with your time?
This was kind of a dream of mine for a while, to start putting on these races and start a supplement company. And I worked at UPS as a supervisor for 13 years before I took the plunge and quit that job and started doing this full time a couple years into race directing. So I would likely still be doing that, not because I was passionate about it, just because I wouldn't have had anything to really kick me in the ass to give it up. Probably still at UPS, which is a fantastic job. And my wife at the time was office manager for the Treasury. So when we started this gig, it was a massive risk to let go of those things, because we knew things had to go a lot differently. And we had to get a lot more registrations. We had to get a lot more sales for the supplements when we pulled that trigger. But we knew we only had one shot to do it, and one thing had to give. We had to give one thing up, and so we followed the dream, and it's worked out so far.
Well, huge congrats on all things that you've been up to. The supplement company seems to be moving really well. The races are filling up like hotcakes. And again, your incredible summer of the Triple Crown of 200s through Destination Trail. Chase, where can we find you, or where could we find the supplements? Where could we look at the races that you have to offer and the distances so we could get signed up for that kind of stuff? Where can we find
everything's at ultraversesupplements.com. And our races are on there. Our supplements are on there. There's tabs at the top. You can click on whatever you want, but you can find everything you need there. If you ever have any questions, you can email Casey or I at Casey@Ultraverse Supplements or Chase@Ultraverse Supplements. Obviously, we'd love to see everyone at a race. We have a really unique vibe at our races. We try to keep them small. We have very low caps at all of them. Like I said, nothing against the big races at all. I love those. But most people who come to our races who like the small race vibe, they end up coming back. We've got some pretty loyal runners. So.
Well, Chase, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your 2024 season with us and your story, the backstory behind that. We appreciate you. I'll see you for sure here probably pretty soon. Of
course, again, man. Come see me in Junction. Come run some trails with me.
I gotta rest this Achilles for a bit, but I'll be running soon enough.
I'm fine resting for a bit too. It doesn't have to be right away. Simon, it was great to meet you too.
Thanks. Yeah, likewise. Congrats on everything, like Brian said. I'm echoing everything he said. I just don't want to repeat it, but amazing on every front. So congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Take care, guys. Have a good night.